Hey everyone, I just want to give you a quick look and visualization at the Tranq, the Quill and the Danq when they're on top of each other in the flesh, and you can see the differences between their tip widths and their relative widths and sizes to each other, because when you're looking online and when you're just looking at a picture, it's kind of hard to judge just how different in size these shapes are. But when you're kind of looking at them in the flesh on top of each other, it's much easier to see that the different shapes and sizing might not be as far apart as you think. As a bonus, I'm also going to overlay the TranqOG on top of the new Tranq so you can see how the sizing has changed in that model as well. Right, let's get into it. So we'll start off with the tips and the tip widths here. And as you can see, they're really not that different between the Tranq and the Danq. And that's because, as I said in the Danq video, the Danq's really just a mixture of the Wraith and the Tranq put together. So that full-on end tip width is almost identical when you're looking at it from this angle. You can see that the Danq is poking out a centimetre longer as it is because it's a 157 and the Tranq's a 155. But besides that, the tips at the very corners are almost identical. You can see the Wraith is just poking out because it's a 159 versus those other two boards. And if we look around the side here, you can also see how the Wraith has that more pulled in nose, so you're missing that surface area there in the tip where the Tranq and the Danq have surface area. And you can also see that the Danq's profile in the tip, the width of the tip, is just a bit wider than the Tranq. It's poking out slightly either side. I might not have it lined up exactly, but you can see that overall it is just a little bit wider past that front foot area. Now, something I mentioned in the video as well was that all these widths are actually the same in line with where the front of my foot is. So I use that second insert there, second narrowest one. And if you go to the rail from there, you can see that all three of these widths are actually the same in the tips. So I think that was an important part of the board, was to make sure that the width just in front of your foot was roughly the same, because I feel that's a really manageable and nice width to ride. If we take a step back a bit and we look from above towards the middle, we can see that the Tranq just dwarfs the other two boards in the middle, and that's because they've got that side cut. If we look underneath, we can see the side cut really pulls in, and it's quite hard to see the outline of these two boards because they're sitting underneath the Tranq. We'll take the Tranq off now and just look at the Wraith and the Danq over the top of each other. For any techies out there, we'll get the tape measure out and give it a quick measure just in an arbitrary spot near this front foot here. About 40.5 centimeters at that front foot position point, and that's the same across all those boards. Alright, so the Tranq's off the top now, and I've done my best to line up these two boards so you can see the differences. And there's a quite substantial difference in surface area in the front of the Danq versus the front of the Wraith. The Wraith is the most pulled in board with the least surface area in the tips, while the Danq is the widest up the front and has the most surface areas in the tips, and that's definitely going to change its performance. But as you can see, the centers of the board are almost the same. You can see that the Danq is ever so slightly wider in the middle, which it should be because the Wraith has that 0.75 amount of side cut, whereas the Danq has only a 0.5 side cut. So you're just getting that tiny bit of extra width there due to that. But besides that, this side cut and this width at the front foot area is basically the same on the Wraith and the Danq. The difference being that the Wraith has that pulled in nose, whereas the Danq continues its rail lines further and gives you more surface area overall, and in my opinion a much bigger feeling board. The 157 Danq is the biggest feeling board in the line. And here are those same boards in a reverse orientation just quickly, so you can see how much that Tranq's poking out the sides when it's going for the middle of the board. You can see that Tranq's just a fair bit wider. I don't have it lined up super right, but you can see overall there's a lot more width there to the middle of the Tranq that's definitely missing from the Danq and the Wraith. Alright, so the last thing I wanted to show you was the Tranq overlaid with the TranqOG. And as you can see, the center width is pretty much exactly the same as it was supposed to be. But when you get up to the tips, it's quite interesting because you can see that the original Tranq is a bit wider here in the tips. You see that bit poking out on either side. It's a bit more width, but it's got that kind of rounded off corner, so the new Tranq actually has a little bit longer rail line, and the tip itself also looks slightly longer, even though it's supposed to be the same 155. But yeah, you can see on this end too, that tip of the old Tranq just slightly wider in the tips, and although that doesn't look a lot, it does make a big difference to how this Tranq rides compared to the other Tranq. But overall, besides that, they're quite similar boards. I hope that's been helpful, and if you've got anything else you want to see about the shapes, just hit me up. I'm happy to film some little things like this so you can get a better understanding of how these boards look and how they might feel on the water. Hope you have fun out there. Peace.